There we go. So let's go ahead and, Brian, if you want to go ahead and click forward. So again, thank you all for joining today's webinar. My name is Trevor Mansell. I'm with XenTegra. I lead up our managed hosted services at XenTegra, and pretty excited about the topic today, disaster discovery as a service powered by Nutanix and XenTegra. So it's kind of near and dear to each of our hearts here today, and we've got some talented folks on the call as well. So Brian, Tim, if you want to introduce yourselves real quick, and we'll dive into it.
Yeah, I'll go first. Thanks for that introduction, Trevor. I'm Brian Clark. I'm the Chief Architect and Technology Officer in the Managed Services Division. I crafted the solution in direct partnership with the kind, talented folks over at Nutanix. I have had a long tenure here as the architect, about 20 years altogether in the technology space. And I am looking forward to discussing this in more detail with all of you. Tim?
Yeah, I'm Tim Fort. I am the senior sales engineer here in the Carolina and Tennessee region for commercial. I've been at Nutanix about 5 years, and before that did a lot of professional services engagements and pre-sales architecting. So really happy to be here and working with XenTegra.
Yeah, appreciate that, Tim. So agenda, we've got a pretty focused agenda here. I'll do a quick, for those that aren't familiar with XenTegra, I'll cover that briefly, and then we'll dive right into the underlying technologies and DR enabling technologies of Nutanix, and then we'll kind of transition into discussing the details of the DR as a service delivered by XenTegra. But and then we'll finish it off with some Q&A. But feel free to, if you've got questions, put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and if it's something that we can go ahead and address right then, we'll do that. So, or I'll tell you if we're going to hold that question to the end if we're having a timing problem. So, all right. So who is XenTegra? So next slide. So, our roots. If you're not familiar, our roots are in EUC digital workspace. We are, a lot of people know us as the Citrix guys, and that's really where we got our start. And XenTegra is about 12 years old. We're a value-added reseller, service provider, full host of services from consulting services through managed support, hosting type services. And key, some of our key strategic partners, Nutanix being, one of the top, and Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, ServiceNow, Salesforce, just to name a few of our focus partners. Next slide. So Andy Whiteside, our founder and CEO, just a quote that he made was, this XenTegra was born out of a need for customer enablement and true partnership. And it sounds like marketing, but it's definitely a true statement from why the company was created and what kind of drives us today. There's a lot of investment back into customer enablement and the community itself. So just a few things to just kind of follow up on that is, these are, we call ourselves, the VAR, value-added reseller 2.0, and we give a lot of stuff away, and we invest a lot of money in our customers and our community. And here's just a few of the things we do: a ton of complimentary assessments across a number of different technology solutions, free of charge, and there's a ton of value to those. So I would, definitely, if you haven't taken advantage of those, definitely reach out to your client exec or someone who's XenTegra and get one of those scheduled. Educational webinars, we do a ton of that, hands-on workshops, we used to do a ton of like week-long on-prem, type of things that were super valuable and free. And then we do podcasts. If you're not familiar with our podcasts, go out to Apple, go out to the Apple podcasts, and you'll see, just Google XenTegra or search for XenTegra, and you'll see quite an extensive list of podcasts that we put out. And those, again, are super valuable too. It's just a good way to get up to speed and current on different technologies and kind of stay connected. And then another big one is we've always given away conference passes, or deeply discounted, so like 90% off type. If you want to go to .next, or you want to go to Cisco or Microsoft big conference, these are things that we give out. We are always giving away to customers. So just if you're interested, again, reach out to your client exec, and we like to give stuff away, as you could tell. And we've given it, as part of this Work Has No Boundaries campaign that we've been doing over the last few years. We've given away 2 Ford Broncos, which was a lot of fun, and now we're giving away, a vacation to Hawaii. So go out there and register, and it's we obviously have a lot of fun giving stuff away. So take advantage of it. And this, I'm not going to read through this. This is just a list of recognition, industry recognition that XenTegra's had over the last few years. And so I'll pause there for a second. You can just look through that. But and then this is a little bit of an eye chart, but I just wanted to throw this up here just to kind of give you a snapshot of the breadth of offerings that XenTegra brings to the table from a technology discipline perspective, and then type of services. So from the different types of consulting, whether it's blocks of hours, fixed projects, advisory type things, health checks, and then deployment services, and then obviously we've got support, managed, and hosted services as well. So Brian, if you want to go ahead and click through. And so at this point, I want to transition to Tim with Nutanix, and we're going to kind of start diving into the DR conversation and why we're having it, and then ended up with talking about our DR as a service specifically. Thank you. Hey, Tim, you're on mute.
I knew that. Yeah, so why DR as a service, right? It's primarily because downtime is a big deal. Not only does downtime look bad to your customers and employees and on the IT team, but can have a massive cost, right? As you can see, customer-facing revenue-generating applications outages drive significant revenue loss and pain. So as you can see here, there's a lot of money being lost every time major applications and platforms go down. Let me hit the next slide. So what is backup business continuity disaster recovery, right? Kind of the traditional methodologies. You have 2 data centers. We're going to run apps in one of those 2 data centers, and then we're going to be able to fail those apps over. The whole idea is that apps are pretty much happy as long as they're running, and they don't really care where they're running, and end users don't care where they're running. As long as they can get to them, and as long as they can access them, and there's not a noticeable performance impact, end users generally don't care. And so the DR magic consists of replication and recovery, right? Those are the two main things. And you got 2 main metrics that go along with that. You've got an RPO, or recovery point objective, or how much data can I lose? And then you got an RTO, or recovery time objective, which is how long before my applications are back up. So DR can be tricky, but leveraging Nutanix fundamental replication and orchestrated failover to the XenTegra cloud services DRaaS infrastructure makes your life a whole lot easier. So what are some of the questions that you kind of need to ask yourself before making a BCDR decision? You know, the primary ones I often think of are, what am I protecting and how often, right? How much data loss can I tolerate, if any? How quickly do my applications need to be back up and running? A lot of the answers for these may be different based on different applications. Do I need third-party applications to make everything work, right? And so kind of have an old way of doing things, right? This is the traditional, you know, BCDR concept, right? You got two options. You've got, I'm going to back up my data, and I'm going to restore that backup back to my existing site. That can take hours, sometimes days, to fully recover and get back up and running. Or I can replicate all my data over to a secondary data center, and I can enable that with hardware and enable replication, and my data and my apps go along with that, so that you can immediately start recovering in a secondary data center. So what's the main problem there? Once the data's in your secondary data center, how do you get it back? How long does that take to rebuild that process, to re-replicate all the data, to get all that back into your primary data center once it's back up to status quo, right? So this can be time consuming and stressful. So how do we do things differently with Nutanix? So if you are familiar with Nutanix at all, you know that we can protect everything anywhere, right? So as long as we're running Nutanix on both sides, we can replicate. So leveraging the Nutanix cloud infrastructure, take advantage of native local storage level snapshot protection for instant recovery of data and applications. So VM, files, objects, data. I can recover that directly on my existing infrastructure. I can take advantage of the native replication to any Nutanix cluster running in any environment, whether that's on-prem, private cloud, public cloud, distributed cloud, or an MSP partner cloud, right? As well as native automated orchestrated one-click failover. So not only do we make failing over fast, simple, and automated, but once your apps are running in DR, we automatically reverse replication and failback plans. So once you fail over in the event of a disaster, you can easily fail back without any additional effort or stress. Next slide. So what are the options for disaster recovery with Nutanix? We kind of talked about it on the last slide, but we can leverage the Nutanix cloud infrastructure, which allows you the flexibility to recover it where it makes sense for your business. If you've already got 2 data centers and you want to run on-premise clusters and replicate between them, we allow you to do that natively within Nutanix. If you don't want to have a secondary site, you can leverage one of our cloud providers or MSPs that have a hosted data center already. And we can replicate to that cluster, and you can manage it yourself, or you can have your MSP or XenTegra manage that, right? Last but not least is the XenTegra fully managed DR as a service. This is a full service offering that not only manages the infrastructure in place, but also the whole DR process, replication recovery process. And so why is this a really, really big deal, especially now? As many of you may know, on December 11th of last year, Nutanix formally announced the end of service life for our hosted XiLeap / DR as a service offering. So current customers can continue to run on that and renew their contracts within the United States until April 16th of 2025, at which time all XiLeap and disaster recovery as a service services will be discontinued, and current customers will need to have migrated off to a new offering. So while I know many customers are disappointed with this announcement, we feel our MSP and cloud partners are uniquely positioned to take on these functions in more comprehensive and cost-effective ways than we even imagined. So for more on that, I'd like to turn it over to Brian to discuss the XenTegra Cloud Services offering, which is why we're all here.
Thanks, Tim. I just want to say it's always a pleasure to have our partners on the call with us, particularly Nutanix, very knowledgeable engineering staff, and just one of those fine companies that just keeps getting better and better as our partnership grows closer and closer every year. So we've talked on a lot of great topics about disaster recovery. We've approached those challenges and how Nutanix can really simplify those challenges. So with XenTegra, we wanted to take that even one step further. So we built essentially disaster recovery as a service. So what does the as a service portion mean when we're talking about disaster recovery? And I always refer to this as dial tone, right? Back in the day, if you're an old man like me, you would have a landline phone plugged into your house and you would pick it up and you'd hear dial tone, right? And you just knew it worked. So that's what we targeted for our solution with disaster recovery as a service. We wanted everything to be turnkey. You turn the key, the car turns on, you drive where you need to go. There's a lot of components to disaster recovery, more than just the technology itself. So we wanted to capture all of that information, all of those processes, all those procedures, and make it easy for our customers. We do offer managed services for disaster recovery, which is a different kind of product that is more tailored fit to fit your options. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But this is absolutely targeted for very specific workloads that run on IHV and that can target. You just want to be told you've got DR, we test it, everything's taken care of. So moving into that discussion, XenTegra Cloud disaster recovery service can either run inside of our XenTegra Cloud, or we can take our solution and put it in your data center and can totally manage it for you. This offers you a great deal of flexibility because you can not only consume it just from us, but from your on-premise data center or using Nutanix NC2 in the public cloud. Both are very, very flexible options. We, as a cloud service provider, are able to tailor fit that to make it very economical for you, as we are tailoring those workloads specifically to you. Whereas in the public cloud, you're kind of not necessarily shoehorned, but there are limited options available into those different metal instances for things like NC2. So we can make ours very affordable and very turnkey for your specific workloads. As we dive into that, there's a lot of questions about, well, how do I get things licensed and who owns what? We break everything down for you and we let you see exactly what you need to be aware of, where you need to be aware of it at, and particularly in terms of licensing. So, Microsoft licensing, Nutanix licensing. If you have extended workloads like end user compute for some things like Citrix, we can take care of that licensing for you. We put it all up on a nice little wrap it up in a bow and can deliver that to you. So you just have one simple bill with one simple expectation every month. So what does the actual DRaaS service encompass? Well, when we look at disaster recovery, the technology component is only a small part of it, right? And Nutanix makes that very, very simple. However, there's a lot of extra components that we need to talk about. The first is, well, I have a bunch of different servers. They do a bunch of different things. They have a bunch of different scripts, all this, extra workload that you don't even think about when you're talking about what you actually have to run, right? And what it takes to move those things from one side of the continent to another side of the continent. So we take care of all of that. We break out those workloads. We list their dependencies. We make sure that all the dependencies move as the correct categories with each other, completely offloading that, and we make sure that it works specifically for you and for your end users. Because if it doesn't work for them, it doesn't matter if we've done all the testing in the world. It's not going to be a successful project. As we do these changes, and as your environment grows and matures and evolves over time, we have to make sure that for cyber liability and cybersecurity insurance purposes, that the documentation is up to date. This is probably the most valuable portion of this service, is that we give you a fully fledged document that specifies exactly what needs to happen, and we keep that document up to date as your environment changes, right? So if these servers had this public IP address and they're swapping over, we document that in the plan, and we make sure that all the stakeholders of that plan are aware of these changes and that the changes are signed off by every party involved to make sure that when your business needs to execute a disaster recovery function, that it's executed smoothly and efficiently. These documents get very big in size as they're very in-depth with screenshots, all the different workflows that have to happen. And then generally speaking, for auditing purposes, you have to submit these documents to those auditors. And we want to make sure that you are delivering the best possible insight into your environment through our documentation. A lot of people are very concerned with failing over a workload. As workloads become a lot more cloud native and you have servers that are phoning home to the cloud, it becomes very difficult to keep track of everything. Some workloads you can't fail over without having an impact to production. Some workloads you can. XenTegra schedules those out for you, pre-plans all these events, provides all the notification and communication to your end users to let them know that, hey, things are happening. You should not have any change in experience because that is critical to disaster recovery. And we document all those changes and anything that happens during the failover event. Not every failover event is supposed to be successful. You want them to be successful and you shoot for them to be successful, but the whole point of testing is to find out if it's going to be successful. So we include all that in our failover testing to make sure that, you know, when the time comes that it's not a test, it's for real, that it runs the way it's supposed to. So we want to make sure that your data is up to date as possible. Using the wonderful technologies provided by Nutanix, we can ensure that with great technologies such as asynchronous, NewSync, and even real-time synchronization between products. If you're in the same metro, can make sure that we can copy your data, your most robust and business critical data when we need to, every time, on time. And we provide that live to you to make sure that, hey, I've got this SQL server, it needs to be copied in real time every second. Well, within a couple seconds in the metro complex. I need to have constant visibility into that, and we provide that through our dashboards. Finally, because some production workloads are so finicky and necessarily you can't fail them over without having a large impact to production, we do have the ability through, again, magical technology of Nutanix to spin up these production workloads in a sandbox environment so that you can go and verify the data integrity is where it needs to be. So we provide this holistic solution to you, turnkey, so that you can totally feel comfortable in your business continuity and disaster recovery needs. So when I design things, I always keep it to the KISS philosophy, right? Keep it simple. So the first thing of keeping it simple is to offload it to us and make it a white glove service. Our customers only care about making sure that their workloads are available 24/7 across the globe. And XenTegra does have several customers that are international that use our data centers, and our data centers are being accessed from all over the world. And I'll dive into our data center design a little bit later. But the first step to that is leveraging us for automation, and we leverage Nutanix, right? So the Nutanix disaster recovery policies and automation workflows really are the heavy lifters here. They make sure that all your workloads are virtually unaware that they're being moved between data centers. A lot of that technology relies on the VPC networking components, otherwise known as flow virtual networking. I'll dive into that a little bit later as well. But the key takeaway here is that it needs to be transparent both to our customers and our customers' customers, i.e. end users, right? If the end user experience changes, we don't believe that we're giving our customers a true disaster recovery experience, because it needs to be one-to-one, in our opinion, to production. So as we dive into that, the most important part, particularly as Tim talked about, was that one-click failover. I don't want to execute 50 different steps when I have disaster recovery. I need one button to click and everything happens automatically, right? I want to remove human error, and I want to verify that the same thing happens every time. And through Nutanix, we can make that possible through these custom orchestration plans. And these custom orchestration plans are universal between the Nutanix platform, right? It's the new way of thinking using Nutanix. And you can take our technology and fail over to us for a failover domain 1, and then fail over again in the public cloud if you want to, using the exact same runbook formulas. These are critical to ensuring that you have your legacy on-premise workloads are failed over, along with all the new cloud native stuff, because you're not going to fail over the stuff from yesterday the way you're going to fail over the stuff for tomorrow. And wrapping that all up into these automation workflows provided by Nutanix ensures that your workloads are always and consistently ensuring their RPO, RTO timelines, and making sure that you can do it anywhere, regardless of the public cloud or private cloud that you're using. So let's dive into those specific technologies and talk about how XenTegra can enable them to enable you. A lot of public clouds use the term hyperscaler these days, right? They have all this hardware sitting unused and they sell it to you guys on a per instance or a per metal basis. XenTegra has what we call enterprise scaling, where we customize that the workload, so the hardware, so to speak, specifically to you to ensure that your needs are met, and you're not paying, like a laundry list sized bill based on all these individual metrics, right? It's one bill for one usage. And if you need to grow, we can grow that with you, right? Nutanix is a very modular and flexible platform with a simple adding of nodes, compute nodes or storage nodes based on your workloads, and based on what components you actually need to upgrade. So we're very modular and flexible in how we can approach your workloads without having to give you 14,000 items on a bill. Nutanix platform also allows all the way down to metro sync technology, right? So if you are within the same metro, we can sync things synchronously, right? Synchronous writes, which is, it does provide you metro availability, but it doesn't provide you region availability. So for region availability, right, I want to go from the East Coast to the West Coast, we can leverage Nutanix asynchronous replication or near sync replication, and we can get you down to sub 1 hour timeframes. 15 minutes is about where most customer workloads can really be serviced at. XenTegra does have, and within our data centers, multiple 10 gigabit pipes where we can ingest a ton of data without having any kind of decrease in performance. Our customers do have dedicated clusters specific to them, so you're not sharing your workload with other customers if you don't want to. Those clusters, because they're independent and you're not being shared at a Nutanix level, means that we can really ingest a ton of workload. We're not constrained by specific IO requirements. There's no noisy neighbors. There's a lot of different capabilities that you wouldn't necessarily have in the public cloud without paying that premium that you can get from XenTegra Cloud because it's specifically scoped to you. Additionally, a lot of customers have very specific application needs. We can tailor our public cloud experience and our private cloud experience to those specific applications. If you need specific IP addresses or any kind of GSLB or anything special on the WAN, XenTegra can provide that turnkey part of the solution for you because XenTegra owns our own public IP space, right? We have our own ASN for BGP peering. We can do a lot of things on the WAN that to act as an extension of your private cloud or private data center that would be a lot more difficult to do in the public cloud. So there's a lot more flexibility using us and turning that into a turnkey solution than you would normally encounter if you're somewhere in the public cloud or having to spend all that time and resources doing it yourself. We currently have 2 locations in the United States. We have our Atlanta data center and we have a data center in Silicon Valley. We have scheduled to deploy more as time goes on to provide regional support for our customers in the Midwest and internationally as well. So keep an eye out for press releases for those to come. So a lot of questions are asked on, well, okay, you have dedicated hardware from the Nutanix level. What do you do from a network perspective? So we have partnered with Fortinet to deliver our networking components, our network as a service. And FortiGate, a fantastic company, has this conceptualization of multi-tenant called VDOMs. And essentially, you can just think of a VDOM as its own layer 3 boundary. This is very convenient for customers because it allows us to segment customer workloads without any kind of overlap on the IP space side. It allows us to segment workloads not at a WAN level, but also at an internal level, providing you next generation firewall capabilities, the ability to do any kind of public cloud feature-rich network application load that you would normally have, things like IPsec peering, the ability to drop in MPLS lines from one point to another. You can complete all of that same technology through XenTegra and consume our next generation firewall as a service and have complete isolation at the network level from all the rest of our customers without having any of those impact as everything is segregated by VDOMs. So the magic question is, well, okay, so I moved my network over. What about re-IP in my virtual machines? Great question. We leverage Nutanix Flow VPC, otherwise known as Flow Virtual Networking, to achieve this task. Again, it's another layer of segmentation at the virtual machine switch layer that allows us to not have to re-IP any of your workloads, including workloads such as NetScaler, when we move them into our data center or to public cloud or anywhere that you're running on Nutanix. It's a overlay network built on top of Genevieve, not to get too deep into the technical weeds here, but it essentially allows us to transition and move workloads between your environment and ours without having to do any kind of re-IPing. This allows you to bring your own IP, greatly reducing the amount of overhead and technology skill requirements to literally forklift the workload from point A to point B, right? You would encounter most of the time you're encountering very difficult routing and addressing problems when you're trying to do disaster recovery. By having the VPC in place, we can easily remove that step and greatly simplify designs and not have to worry about getting any kind of advanced re-IP scripting when we transition these workloads. As I mentioned earlier, we do have our own public IP space, and we can do BGP peering for you. No time required really to do that at all. That allows us to bring up our WAN and act as a secondary carrier for yourself. What's really unique about the VPC technology in combination with our public address space is that you can run a NetScaler virtual object, virtual machine inside of a VPC, right? If you're familiar with the NetScaler stack, wonderful platform, very robust network to device. And the fact that you can run it in a VPC without having any kind of special hypervisor needs or adding additional networking components it makes it a very flexible deployment. You can essentially use this technology in combination with other virtual technologies to provide yourself virtually every capability that you would ever have on premise from a networking standpoint. So it's very robust and very flexible and very compatible, right? You know, a lot of companies are worried that I can't run my virtual appliances on either AHV or within a virtualized network stack. But that is really not the case in the modern era. There's a lot of maximum compatibilities, and you can run a lot of different technologies, both on the AHV platform and within VPCs. So if you've got any workloads that you're concerned about that you can't get to work, you know, send us a message. The chances are we can. And then finally, you know, there is always the concern of, well, I'm bringing, you know, sensitive data into a data center that I don't have any control over. Rest assured that our data center is SOC compliant. And we extend all of our security abilities into our customers. So a lot of our customers fail the workloads into us, and chances are that our software and hardware is locked down tighter than theirs is, right? So we have those next generation firewalls. We have those enters policy inspections. We're doing encryption at rest. So all the technologies that are best practice and recommended from a security perspective, chances are you're just going to get that by leveraging XenTegra as your disaster recovery as a service partner. So there's a lot of big wins in consuming the service outside of just the actual ability to do disaster recovery. I mentioned earlier that we've partnered up with Equinix to host our data centers. If you're not familiar with Equinix, it's a tier 4 data center / tier 5 is how they kind of refer to themselves. They are a global company. What's really unique about Equinix is they're one of the few data center providers that allows us to have direct connections into large public cloud providers like Azure or AWS. These connections allow us to hybridize your workloads with public cloud, greatly decreasing latency while allowing you to burst into the public cloud if you need to, or consume cloud native services that you just don't have any need to store on premise, right? So the idea here is that by leveraging Equinix, you can maximize your hybrid cloud benefit. You can keep the services that you need to on-prem in a tier 4 data center while easily and efficiently consuming public cloud services through those direct connections. As we expand our private cloud offering, it will be continued to be used in Equinix to take advantage of the Equinix DCI backbone, allowing our data centers across the world to have low latency between each other. It's not that uncommon that our hosted customers want to consume disaster recovery service within themselves, and so we can easily take advantage of the Equinix DCI fabric to replicate their workloads, from region to region. Alrighty. So I've talked a lot, and I think there's a lot of information that we can gather from our customers that we want to present to you guys. There's a lot of information on this slide. We just want you to take this slide, take this whole deck, we'll provide it after the webinar. Please review it. There's a lot of information here that we don't have time to talk about. I didn't want to touch base right there in the middle that for our XiLeap customers here that are interested in migrating platforms as the XiLeap service is deprecated, The XenTegra Disaster Recovery as a Service is a full-featured service for Nutanix customers, right? So previously, if you were unable to utilize functions such as objects or Nutanix files because those weren't supported in XiLeap, rest assured that they are fully supported in XenTegra Cloud. So as our wonderful partner sunsets that service, hopefully there is a light at the end of the tunnel there for you, that you can bring those services to XenTegra, and that we can actually give you more capabilities than you previously had, possibly at a cheaper cost. So there's a lot of big savings and a lot of opportunity to be had here as the XiLeap service is sunset. In terms of overall services that you can consume from XenTegra in regards to hosted Nutanix platform services, we do offer dedicated services, otherwise known as our DX platform. We do have shared instances for those cost-sensitive customers. These are allowed to be consumed very similar to Azure or AWS, where they're at a per instance level, additionally at a per TIB storage level for consumption, for things like objects and files. The ability to take our disaster recovery service and run it in your cloud is known as Edge. And we do have Metal partnered up with Equinix, where if you have your own data center or your own colo, and you wanted the best of both worlds, we do have a very new offering known as Metal, which allows you to consume the actual hardware component from us and bring your own licensing and run it all inside of an Equinix cloud. In the future, we will be offering backup as a service partnership with Cohesity that will allow us to do this disaster recovery platform into public cloud. Keep an eye out for that in the future. And then if you don't have an AHV workload, if you're running on something like VMware or Hyper-V, we can craft a customized solution for you that leverages our best practices, that leverages our engineering staff, and we can design that a managed service for disaster recovery for you that essentially gives you the same idea, but it's customized specifically to you, and we can develop specific SLAs and RPOs and RTOs around that and deliver that to you as well. So we're very flexible in how we want to do this, and our goal here is just to provide you the best experience, whether it's as a service or as a packaged managed service. So what's the takeaway here? Well, the Nutanix DRaaS service by XenTegra is specifically for AHV customers. We do have solutions for customers that don't run AHV. It's designed to be simple, turnkey. We want to make everything as easy for you. If you have cybersecurity or cyber liability documentation requirements, this service will allow you the documentation to essentially check that box. We offload everything from your engineering staff. We provide architectural design reports, monitoring reports, everything you need to do to be compliant with your platform services. It's one low monthly price. It's not going to be a bunch of, well, you're using this and that and 14,000 different things, right? We want to keep things simple. Oh, we do have a question here. Can we replicate AHV objects? Yes, very similar. If you want to have a breakout discussion about that, feel free to send us an email, and I can get into the full-fledged design, but the quick answer is yes. Back to the slide. We do leverage Equinix. That allows us very, very low latency into the public cloud. Our cloud offering does have 99.9999% uptime. I'd like to pat myself on the back. That's higher than Azure or AWS for the 2023 year. A big component of that is leveraging Nutanix and that solid platform. So, big thank you to Nutanix for making our lives easier. Final aspect here that I haven't touched on is that because we can customize our solutions to you, we can customize them down to the node type. Right, we do have several customers running GPUs inside of our data center and failing those GPUs over for disaster recovery. So if you have any kind of empowered or GPU powered EUC, XenTegra, I think, set the standard for that, and we can absolutely fail that over for you from a disaster recovery perspective. Right, so the GPU, while available in things like public cloud, it's a lot more restricted in how it's used, and there's a lot less offerings in which you can get with XenTegra Cloud. So hopefully all of these things are making your life easy. Please let us know if you have any additional questions in this time period, and we'll be happy to answer them. And thank you for attending the webinar.
Hey, no, thank you, Brian. Thanks, Tim. We got a few extra minutes here. We can hang out. I'll see if there's any additional questions. And let's see. It looks like we got one here. Can we have multiple RPs to mitigate ransomware?
Absolutely.
Multiple.
Absolutely. So, you know, we have, just so everyone's aware, Trevor touched on it a little bit earlier, we do have free Nutanix micro assessments where our engineers, our solutions architects will go in there and take a look at your existing Nutanix environment. And we'll recommend turning on the recovery point feature and just saying, hey, this is the best thing you can do to protect against ransomware. And absolutely, you can send all those recovery points to our data center. And so, for example, if you are do unfortunately get some kind of ransomware event, you can fail over 2 hours prior to that event happening into one of our data centers, you know, in less than an hour. So absolutely, we highly recommend turning on recovery points within your own environment. And we absolutely record, you know, on average about 24 recovery points per virtual machine into our environment so that most people want to be able to recover back to an hour point in time for a virtual machine. So yes, great question.
So Brian, Tim, I'm just going to pose a question to you. Just, I think this is not a little bit more high level, I guess, but what do you think, you know, what are you seeing out there when you're talking to customers as it relates to DR? Like, what are the biggest challenges you think people are facing for the most part? You know, you know, my opinion is it's not replication necessarily, right? When it comes to actually achieving a real outcome that's fast, you know, what are the big items that you think people are struggling with the most?
I think from my perspective, what I see the most is customers struggling with where to recover to, right? Whether it's public cloud from a cost perspective, whether it's they want to keep that data on-prem in a second data center. Do they want to keep that data center going? Do they want to be in the data center business? In a lot of cases, that's the question they're asking. And then what are all the tools they need to make this work, right? Because if you're talking about, you know, traditional 3-tier environments, you're talking about, you know, storage replication and all those things, there's a lot of pieces and parts that go into making that solution work. And so for Nutanix customers, we kind of given them that easy button where it's like, you know, set up your replication, you can replicate to any cluster. And so then at that point, it's just figuring out where you want to replicate it to. Is it your own cluster? Is it a cloud cluster? Is it a MSP managed cluster and a DR as a service? So I think those are the things that are generally on customers' minds. And then, you know, obviously cost is always a factor. So.
Yeah, that cost thing, you know. Oh my
I always
goodness.
tell them it's only money, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, these DR conversations, yeah, they all eventually lead to that. So here's one for you. So networking, like what, you know, it's the access layer. Like, what do you think people are struggling with there, you know, and or just maybe not before maybe they're not struggling with it, but you know, I think if they're going into doing DR for the first time or first project, what do they need to be worried about? I'm putting you on the spot, so you're welcome.
I'll take that one. And I would say that a lot of customers are fighting that public access layer specifically, right? So if I fail over from the West Coast to the East Coast, you know, chances are, if I'm a small to medium-sized customer, I'm not using any kind of GSLB or round-robining DNS system. Like I've got hard-coded IP addresses in my public A records, right? So if I'm trying to use something like Citrix or IPsec tunneling, you know, SSL VPN to get in, I have to manually update that record to point to the new IP space to get into the systems. And chances are that depending on DNS propagation time, I might have failed over my workloads, but that doesn't mean my users can get in. So I would say the easiest thing to do is actually put Citrix Cloud in front of that. Using Citrix Cloud and Citrix Cloud Gateway Service, you essentially have zero trust access into your environment. So you don't have to worry about DNS records. And you can offload that entire thing to Citrix and have easy access into your environment without ever having to flip a switch.
Man, that was a big advertisement for Citrix there, Brian.
I like things that are easy, Trevor.
Yeah, I hear you. User data. Anything to talk about there? I mean, I think
we do have one more question here. So if we want to co-locate Citrix VDIs in DR solution and I'm on Citrix Cloud, do I have a different site for the DR site or is it all transparent? That's an interesting question because you can do it both ways. And it really depends on how your users, what's icon they click on. So from, I think the easiest thing to do is actually to have a separate resource location within Citrix Cloud with a separate set of cloud connectors. You want to leverage the CCD locations GPO within Citrix to have VDAs on side A point to their Citrix Cloud connectors and the VDAs on side B to point to their cloud connectors. At that point, because you have two resource locations, you can feed both machine catalogs into a single delivery group. And so maintenance mode 1 during a failover event, because the delivery group is the same, users only have one icon to click, so it's all transparent. That's generally speaking the way to go. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that was good. Well, guys, I just want to thank you guys for joining, everybody else that joined today. Hopefully this was helpful and informative and all the above. And if you want to learn more, or you want to have a conversation about it, or you want to just get scope out a deployment with us, we'd be happy to do it. Just reach out to your client executive or one of us, and we can put you in touch with the right people. But yeah, big shout out to Tim. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I want to thank you guys too, because you guys have been a great partner for us, and I'm really kind of blown away by what you've built in the XenTegra cloud on Nutanix, and it's far and away the best I've seen in the market, including XiLeap, which is awesome.
That is great to hear, and I'm just for the record, we haven't paid Tim for this webinar, so. All right. Well, hey, y'all have a great rest of your day, and again, thank you.